Governor Lamont, Chairman Moran, members of the Governor's Workforce Council. My name is Joe Bertolino, President of Southern Connecticut State University, and on behalf of the university, I would like to welcome you to Southern. If this is your first visit, welcome, and if this is your second or more visit, welcome back. We hope that you will come to visit us often. We are very proud of our campus. It's a great place. We have the privilege of educating some 10,000 students here, 95% of which are residents of the state of Connecticut, and we take great pride in that. We are proud to be the Regional Public University of New Haven and the surrounding community, and honored that you have selected Southern as the host site for your meeting. So it's exciting to see leaders of commerce, industry, and education addressing the key issue of ensuring a competitive and highly trained workforce in the state. Southern graduates about 2,000 students a year, 85% of whom stay on to live and work in the state. So this university has an important role to play in preparing Connecticut's workforce. In fact, I would call this preparation a moral imperative aligned with our social justice mission here at the university. Southern is in and of the community, engaging with our neighbors to help them resolve challenges and create opportunities. And many of those opportunities lie in the area of workforce development, as we actively look to build successful collaborations with institutions in the region and across the country. Some quick examples: we've partnered with the City of New Haven to create a pathway for Southern students into the rapidly growing biotechnology industry. We've joined with Gateway Community College and the Regional Water Authority to create a program preparing graduates to fill the growing number of managerial and technology positions that will soon become vacant in the region's utilities companies. Also, students at Gateway and Housatonic can take Southern classes at their respective campuses that may be applied to a 4-year degree, and we do that for free. And we've partnered with the city and its school system to build the Obama Magnet University School, a K-4 elementary school connected to our College of Education that will welcome some 400 children to campus next semester. Additionally, we'll soon break ground for our new home for the School of Health and Human Services, partnering with health and social service agencies in the region, and we've launched a series of accelerated bachelor's and master's degree programs that allow students to complete both in 5 years. We also have a robust early college program which enables high school students in New Haven and surrounding communities to take free college classes for credit at their own high school. So there's a lot to be proud of at Southern, and I can say with confidence that we are contributing to the workforce development in Connecticut. So I invite you to please come back and visit with us, and more importantly, please feel free to partner with us. We're delighted to be hosting again today. We wish you well in your meeting, and thank you for being here. Welcome to Southern. Delighted you're here. And I believe I have the privilege of introducing the governor and of the state, and also our chairperson, Garrett Moran. So I don't know who's first. It's always the governor, right? Governor Lamont, welcome to Southern.
We're following your lead. This is great to be back.
Thank you.
What a beautiful campus. I'll just follow a little bit on what Joe was saying. Earlier this week, I was invited to the Aerospace Manufacturing Association meeting at the Civic Center in Hartford. And not sure what to expect. I knew it was a job fair. I know that aerospace and manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, are having a tough time recruiting. Got to make sure the folks are there. I thought maybe it was a job fair. I thought there were going to be a lot of folks who are interested in finding jobs. And I showed up, and there were 2,000 middle school and high school students there, each looking at probably 100, 150 different aerospace manufacturing firms. And these 8th graders, 9th graders, they were trying to make up their minds at an early age, whether they wanted to go to a technical high school, whether they wanted to go to a traditional high school, what's the difference, tell me about your company versus this company, what's it like working in manufacturing in this day and age, what type of, how long do I need? Do I need 2 years? Do I need 4 years after college? It was incredible. 9th graders, I mean, what were we doing in 9th grade? And it just reminded me how skills and training and education have changed. And as my friend Garrett Moran reminds me all the time, the workplace is changing a lot faster than education. And that's part of what we're trying to do here today, is to make sure our educational institutions are aligned with what our major employers and our smaller employers need going forward. You know, after the the aerospace manufacturing event I was at, Jim, I was just reminded right down the street is the Stanley Black & Decker Manufactory. I think that's what we call it. Trying to introduce, again, young people in terms of what is manufacturing in the 21st century and bring them up to speed on it's clean, it's green, it's lean, it's state-of-the-art, it pays well, and these are amazing jobs. And I always like to remind people when they talk about woe is us in Connecticut and we don't have Silicon Valley, I say, hey, we are the Silicon Valley of manufacturing. And the best and the brightest are here. We make the most sophisticated equipment, be it jet engines, to tools, to helicopters, and this is where you want to be. I think broadly that we have thousands and thousands of advanced manufacturing jobs we're not fitting right now. And one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that our manufacturers are aligned with our colleges, aligned with our community colleges, aligned with our technical high schools, or we are training the people for the jobs that are going to be out there. And it's not just manufacturing. I mean, here we are in New Haven, which is, really the home of life sciences. And really what Yale's doing, Peter, and what the advance we've got here in terms of life sciences and the growth we've got. And shame on us if I don't do everything I can as a governor, working with each and every one of you to make sure we're not continuing to train people for the advanced skills that are there. And it's advanced skill in the advanced life sciences, but as Yale New Haven Hospital can tell us, we need primary care docs, and we need nurses. And we've got to do a better job of making sure that our skills are aligned with what the needs are out there. And you can go to a place like a Career Academy in Waterbury, which is a high school where one of the specialties is in healthcare. And each and every one of those folks has a job when they graduate, or each and every one of those folks goes on to a college where they can get another degree, help them into the healthcare world. I was looking at the list of projects and task force we have, and when it comes, keep going further south. Go down to Stanford, where it's Indeed and Charter, and what we're doing there in terms of data, what we're doing there in terms of digital production. The world is changing. Woe is us. We used to have the largest trading floor in the world down there. It was the UBS trading floor. And now finance is contracting. What's going to happen to Connecticut? Well, the world is changing. And that largest trading floor in the world is soon going to be the largest digital production studio in the world. And I've got to make sure that we have the skill sets there to make sure that those employers want to come to Connecticut. Because there's a global search for talent as you look around the world. And this is our greatest strength. I mean, Florida has sunshine and Texas has oil. We've always had one of the greatest education systems in the world. And that's K through 12. Those are our technical high schools. Those are the greatest universities in the country, greatest universities in the world. People from around the world come to get educated here in Connecticut. So, Joe, wherever you went, I mean, I'm glad that 88% of your graduates stay. I got to do a better job of making sure that more of these folks at our educational institutions, be it high school, college, and beyond, know that they've got a good paying job here. And the skills that we're educating are aligned with what our employers need going forward. And that's why I'm so proud to be able to introduce my great friend Garrett Moran. Because when it comes to public-private partnerships, which is what we've got to do here, so, sometimes academia and the business world didn't always talk the same language. And that's what we got to do. That's what I'm trying to do in Hartford, to make sure the political world understands the business world and vice versa, and what we have to do to be aligned. And Garrett spent much of his career in finance, got retrained himself, and then was leader of a program called Europe, but brought kids, often inner city kids from underprivileged backgrounds, gave them the technical skills for their first amazing job. And this is why I'm inspired what we're trying to do here. And I'll just leave you with one other thought. This is a unique time in my life. I'm 65, where we have tens of thousands of jobs that are out there. And I see kids at the advanced manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing. I see the number of jobs that just are waiting for a kid with a little bit of ambition, a little bit of training, a little bit of skill, opportunity to lift up young people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have had this type of an opportunity in another generation. We're going to make sure they get this opportunity by making sure the jobs that are out there align with the skills these kids need. And that's why I'm really proud to introduce Garrett Moran.
Thank you, Governor Lamont, and welcome to all of you. We're already behind schedule, so to those speakers out there who think they're speaking for 10 minutes, it's now 9. Nick's going to give you a timer, and you'll catch up with that. My favorite statistic on workforce is that when I got out of high school, 75% of the jobs in America could be had with a high school degree or less. In Connecticut, that's about 30% now. And the other 70% are divided by between those requiring a 4-year degree or more and those requiring something more than high school and less than a 4-year degree. 100% of the jobs in the country that have been added in the last 10 years have all been given to those with more than high school degrees. So none of the growth has been in high school degrees. Technology, as we all know, is moving fast. Business is moving much faster than it has, trying to keep up with technology. And education is trying to do the same, and it's lagging. Nobody's fault. We were not set up for this level of speed. I think this presents a challenge for all of us. I think fundamentally we have to think differently about how we partner and what is expected of us broadly in the community. So business people and educators and trainers and so forth, we need to all self-evaluate. Hopefully this council can further that conversation and get everyone to reset, because it really is not good enough to do it the way you did it before, even if you were doing an A-plus job. We know how to do many of the things that are required, so that's the good news. We just have to get about getting at them, and I think the challenge is mostly a challenge of leadership, and we have a room full of leaders, so we need to engage one another and figure out what that means and what our role is very aggressively. There's a lot of urgency here. If you talk to the business leaders, they're frantic about hiring talent. If you speak to young people who are, or older people who are outside the mainstream and trying to catch this bus of the growing economy, they are absolutely frantic and desperate. So there's a lot of urgency all around if you just put your toe in the water. I'm going to talk for a little bit about themes for the way we want to approach the work. First of all, there was a law passed with a resolution a few years ago, 3 years ago or so in Connecticut, that said we will aspire to have 70% of the working age population in Connecticut have more than a high school degree, meaning a market value credential at least, if not an associate's or a bachelor's, by the year 2025. You got something in your board book that showed where we are. We've come up to 54%, increasing 7 points over the last 10 years. So we went from 47 to 54 over 10 years. We want to go to 70 over 5 or 6 years. Frankly, I'm not sure whether that pencils out. One of the things we're going to figure out this year is how can we be aggressive and go after that, and we're going to set a target that either affirms or revises that target, and then we will build a lot of subsidiary goals that all the people in the room are going to sign up for, whether you're in the K-12 system or in the college system, early childhood, or in a manufacturing company. We all have a role to play, and we're all going to have very specific data-driven goals tied to an overarching objective. And today the idea to beat is 70% by 2025. We need to build market-driven partnerships across the board. And market-driven is not an obscenity in the academic universe. It's like market-driven is code for reality. We need to link arms and figure out how to get the best for our young people and how to build a strong, powerful economy. We're competing with all the other states in the union. I spent a lot of my last 6 years flying around the country meeting with mayors and educators and companies in cities like Charlotte and Columbus and Seattle. And when you visit with those folks, which I did a lot of cities, it's remarkable the difference between the cities that have their act together and all their leadership across those different areas have a plan and they know what it is, and those cities that aren't together and are not organized. If you're an investor or a person who's thinking about moving and you go to one of those cities where everyone's got a plan and they're on it, you feel a lot more confident about going there. So one of the goals here is to get a plan that we all feel a lot of ownership with, we all know what our role is, and we all know who our partners are. And when people come to visit Connecticut, they walk away saying, these guys are going places, they have a plan. That's the way I dream about what we're trying to do. That will involve creating goals that are data-driven. We're going to create a dashboard that will be published that will have all the subsidiary goals we're going to create, and we'll watch it, and we'll hold each other accountable, and we'll be embarrassed by that, and we'll all feel a lot of very positive peer pressure to meet those goals. We have to figure out how to remove obstacles for people who want to participate. In a prior role, we had created a front end for our students and people who wanted to apply the system, and the internal team and our IT folks and everybody just thought we had an absolutely whiz-bang great thing. And I recruited some secret shoppers to go around the country and try to pretend like they were students and entering in our system. We found some stunningly surprising things that we were able to fix, but we never would have caught if we didn't have a very tough-minded consumer approach to testing ourselves. So I'm talking about consumers as businesses, but also folks who are trying to enter into our systems to find out what job opportunities and training opportunities are. So that's a big project. It will take time. Creating a data environment that can create a good conversation among us is something that we must stick to. We got to really make a plan, stick to it, and invest in it. We spend a lot of money as a state contracting for services. That's the fundamental model. We hire trainers in various forms. Too much of that is contracting for activity and not contracting for outcomes. So we need to take a hard look at all of that. This is a big wave in the workforce social impact sector, and it's a good way to make sure that our dollars are being spent well and to de-emphasize the things that are not making it happen. The last general theme that's kind of newish on the scene, I think, sounds obvious, but is to consider the whole family. We spend a lot of money as a state on social services, and we spend a lot of money and time on supporting businesses to grow jobs, but not often enough do we connect the two and say, for example, if we want to give a single mom a stipend for training, but she doesn't have child care, the likelihood of her being able to get that transformational training opportunity and job is dramatically diminished if she doesn't have child care. So we give out a lot of stipends for child care. Let's try to make sure that we're doing the easy things to connect those up and look at the whole family so we can build for success. A second on what the role is of the board. Our role, first and foremost, is to advise the governor on a workforce strategy. A shape that will take in the near term is building a plan, which we want to publish by, say, October, so within less than a year. My goal would be to have it near complete by July. It's got to be market-driven. It's going to take all the best things we can find in Connecticut and describe how we're going to scale those things. It's going to steal the best ideas we can get from around the country. We also have a parallel responsibility to evaluate and advise and sort of monitor the activities of our workforce development boards. This committee exists and is similar to committees in other states. It was mandated by the federal government as part of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and we have very specific responsibilities that you'll learn about, and we will acquit ourselves of those. A lot of this work is done in the Department of Labor and a few other places, and it's our job to be their partner and supporter, so forth. We actually have a quadrennial plan that we owe the Department of Labor in March. It will be open for public review in January, In normal circumstances, this board would have been pretty central to design of that. So we're going to run and catch up and do what we can do and acquit ourselves of our responsibility there. And my expectation is that we will file with the Department of Labor in a year's time a revised plan that will reflect the plan that I just described that we'll do. The structure of the board, the governance, I want to talk a little bit about that. This is our first meeting. First thing first, I want to recognize two people who got this meeting going and have been absolutely essential to me working through the last couple of months. One is Kathy Marioni, who's the senior person, raise your hand, in the Office of Workforce Competitiveness in the Department of Labor. And the other is Nick Simmons, please stand up, who is a special project person in the governor's office and has been a terrific help to me. And these folks will be at you via emails, and they're the people to go to if you need help. We'll make that easy for you to find. Secondly, the governor has appointed a vice chair for me, Kelly Valeries. Please raise your hand. Kelly, amazingly enough, is a manufacturing CEO, a PhD in education, extensive depth with the workforce boards, and has also worked on a number of projects with the community college system. So she's going to keep me honest, and if I get hit by a bus or miss a meeting with a cold, she'll be here to preside. Structurally, we have 24 members and we have 19 ex officios. The 24 members are pretty much what the law mandates. We have 13 CEOs. This is it proscribes that it is a business-led committee and council. And the CEOs represent all of the big sectors, and they represent big companies and mid-sized companies. So hopefully we will get a variety of perspectives. We also have 2 labor leaders, 2 K-12 leaders, 2 legislative leaders, the 2 Tonys. We have 2 university presidents. Let's see. We have a representative of the philanthropic sector in the Hartford Foundation, and Jay. And we have a community action agency in Manette Ferguson here also. So we have a very diverse group in terms of where they come from. They all have in common that they have a stake in the workforce game. Of the 19 ex officios, 10 are commissioners of state agencies. All of them work for the state in one form or another, with 2 exceptions. 3, just to give you a sense of the diversity of these participants, 3 represent business broadly, the Department of Economic and Community Development, CERC, which is the nonprofit affiliate of CERC, and our Chief Manufacturing Officer, Colin Cooper, who just started. We have 7 education entities represented in the ex officio group, the State Department of Education, which is K-12, Miguel Cardona, the Office of Higher Ed, Tim Larson, the CSCU, the colleges and universities, UConn, CTE, which is the high school technical education system. We have the superintendent of the Department of Corrections school system. And lastly, we have the representative of the independent colleges around the state, which hopefully will be playing a bigger and more prominent role as we go on. Our view of workforce is that it starts in about 7th or 8th grade. We could debate it, but that's really important, as the governor was just saying, and it goes all the way up through the most technicals. We also invited to be partner members, which is another non-voting class, the 5 heads of our workforce development boards. They're spread around the geography of the state. They are experts in their local economies and in what works in workforce. They manage contracting out with service providers. They will be 1 on each of the 5 of the 6 committees, and they will keep us honest and keep us grounded in what's real and practical, and we will keep them in line as well. So don't be intimidated by their knowledge. We also have, I didn't mention, we have the Office of Policy and Management. We have the Department of Administrative Services. We have Kurt Westby, the head of the Department of Labor, who has been most completely involved with workforce on the ex officio group. I will also nominate a group of others to join each of the committees, 1 person to join each of the committees, who, broadly speaking, will be workers to help us do the work. The committees are going to work their way through a lot of stuff, try to sort out things and make recommendations, and so I'm trying to build in an infrastructure of people who are actually going to pick up a pencil, organize the group, discipline the work, and make it easy for all of our board members who all have very important jobs and are extremely busy. So hopefully this will be challenging and interesting for all of you who are busy and are making time to come here, and you won't regret spending the time. We have 6 committees, 3 industry groups generally. I think of it as manufacturing, healthcare, and white collar, by which I mean the training world is divided up that way generally. Manufacturing and related are one kind of training, white collar jobs, so finance, in our list, we call them IT and business services, but it's anything that basically trains for a white-collar job will fall into that group. We have a committee of all the education services, a committee for the supporting services that I mentioned before, all the things that help people get into the work stream, and a data group that will focus on data and accountability systems, which will be a big investment. Those mandates will overlap in a lot of the initiatives that we get excited about. So if we're talking about, for example, the idea I mentioned of getting child care stipends for someone who wants to go into a training program, that's naturally going to cross the boundaries of our committees, and we'll figure out how to get that work done as we go on. In broad brush, the work will be divided into the first period, which is before the first meeting in January, where a team and some outside consultants that we'll retain are going to do a lot of work in getting the state of play defined and a list of the most compelling best practices inside the state and outside the state so that the committees can review that in January, say, gee, this is what I like the best, this is what I didn't know. The state of play will include a lot of analysis of the supply and demand of work. So workers, where's the job demand, where are the workers available, and where are the gaps. After the January meeting, for the next 2 meeting periods, basically, which will be in May and July, the committees will be recommending initiatives and iterating on those, trying to improve those, test those, meet with experts, and try to wrestle something to the ground that looks, when taken together, like a plan. I could go on quite a bit about that, but I won't. I think we've got a pretty good idea of what we want to do. So by July, we've got some kind of straw man, and then we continue to work with fiscal realities, with legislative strategies, and with making sure it all comes together in a final product that we're all comfortable with. A minute, and I'll get down. On the work structure, committees have a chair and a vice chair. They also have what I'm calling a chief administrative officer. That is typically going to be someone who's the head of an agency who will have access to people in the state to help them do the work. The CAO, I'll call them, they will partner with the chair to make sure that the agenda is set, that the meetings are productive, and that they're getting the state support. I also mentioned this extra person I'm going to put on each committee. They will help do legwork and get things done, again, so that we can leverage the time of the folks in the room. I haven't designated chairs of committees, and you all know I can't do that. I have to invite them and beg them, and that will be happening in the next week or so. So get ready. Our staff support in the government has traditionally been the Office of Workforce Competitiveness in the Department of Labor. We're going to move that function broadly into the Office of Policy and Management. And the logic, this way back was an independent agency. The idea being that this is a group that sets policy and strategy and also monitors the activities of all the folks in the 10 or 12 other agencies that do the work. Their job will be to hold people accountable to a plan and to report to the governor and to this committee. So it's important that they have at least equal status with the other agency heads. So we're repotting that. It will be an assistant secretary in OPM, and we're launching a search on that right now. I will eventually invite a couple of people from this group to join a small search committee. There will be 3 or 4 people that are working in the state and a couple of folks on the board to interview candidates. I've got a process started on my own because I feel a lot of urgency on that. One final thing is we have amended bylaws. The board book has a summary of the amendment. It's pretty procedural stuff, really just facilitating getting the work done. It doesn't change the power structure in terms of there's already a high level of discretion given to the chairman, I'm happy to report, in terms of appointing people and taking them off and calling meetings and closing things down. Mostly what we did was enable some of these extra roles and things like that. I'd like to vote on that as a committee, as a board rather, at the end of the meeting, and we can discuss whether it's appropriate given that people have just been given the document here. If we voted on it at the next meeting, we'll just be operating technically a little differently from the bylaws, which I think we won't get into trouble for. So I'll rely on your judgment. The last piece of business today. Now I will hand it over to David Lehman, head of the Department of Economic and Community Development. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited.
Thank you, Garrett. 9 minutes, or am I down to 7 or 8 right now? I'll try to keep it short. So I realize we have a long agenda here on our first day. What I wanted to do is really walk quickly through from a business perspective with a lot of the conversations that we at DECD and CERC have had over the past 3 to 6 months, how we think at a high level about workforce and what those conversations are going, how they're going, I should say. So this will give you a sense of how we're thinking about the state. Live, work, and play, we're really going to focus on work here. And at a high level, what I wanted to take you through was a snapshot of the workforce. Broadly, how to measure success. What are those metrics going to look like? And this will be a very data-driven philosophy, as Garrett mentioned. But how, from a business, from the C-suite perspective, how are folks thinking about success as it relates to workforce? I want to touch on briefly the partnership that DECD and CERC have formed. Also, the Economic Development Strategy project that we are currently working on, and then a couple examples of workforce successes as well as challenges. I think Kelly and Commissioner Westby, are going to talk about that in more detail, but I'll touch on that at the end. So at a high level, educational attainment, what percentage of Connecticut employees have bachelor's degree or higher? And you can see the far left there, 40%, the yellow chart as well as the light blue, 40% of Connecticut has a bachelor's degree or higher. That is in line with the Northeast, and that compares favorably versus the nation, which is roughly 33%. There are certain labor market areas, for example, Stamford, Bridgeport, and Danbury, where that number, that 40% number, gets closer to 50%. And that is top 10 in the nation. So in terms of bachelor's degree or higher, we compare very, very favorably, in certain pockets of the state incredibly favorably, which has long been a strength of the state of Connecticut. When you think about this at the sector level, Connecticut's historically been known and still known for two significant industries. And these, you will hear this theme more and more from me, because these are going to be core industries for us when we think about business retention and recruitment. And those industries are finance and insurance and manufacturing. So we outperform, where we have a greater percentage of those industries, both versus the U.S. as well as the Northeast. You can see the other sectors here. We try to do this left to right in terms of where the significant employment was, but manufacturing, significant outperformance versus the Northeast, and then finance and insurance the same. This doesn't tell the whole picture, though, because I do want to show you a slide, and this is something that should concern everyone, but also something we need to fix and a real opportunity. How have we performed in these industries in particular since the Great Recession? So you can see here, manufacturing and finance and insurance, we've lost jobs. So we're down 10% in finance and insurance. Some of that, I would argue, is structural. But if you look, the country as a whole has actually gained jobs in that area. And then in manufacturing, we're down 3%. Now, that is an area that since 2016 has actually been growing in the state and growing faster than the broader job creation. But if you look at versus the U.S., the U.S. jobs over that same time period since the Great Recession are up roughly 10%, and we're down 3%. So those are pockets of opportunity, but some stuff that we absolutely need to address, because those are sectors we're going to be very focused on retaining folks as well as growing. So how will we measure success? And I spent a lot of time on this trying to come up with 3 metrics, try to make this very data oriented. But when I speak to folks in various industries, it depends, because workers and the needs for workers and various skills really depends on the industry and the size of the business sometime. But, and the governor said this many times when we speak to businesses, the 3 things we hear regularly are transportation, fiscal stability in the state, and talent in terms of what they're concerned about and what are the constraints to growth. So I think at its simplest level, we want to make sure when we're having those conversations in 2025, to use that number, that talent is not coming up, that there are lots of businesses challenging, as many folks here know, but that getting the folks that you need to grow your business, access to those folks in the state of Connecticut, that should not be part of the conversation. We'll probably be talking about transportation then, as the governor knows, but hopefully talent is off the table, and this group really addresses that, and we take talent off the table. And then the second bullet point here is a lot of this is relative in my mind. Absolute growth is going to matter, and how we look versus a broad swath of peers is going to matter. But we want to make sure that we have the most desirable and the most highly skilled workforce vis-a-vis our peers. Certainly Massachusetts and New York come to mind in the conversations that I'm having for the most part. But relative to the U.S. more broadly, we want to make sure that on the key metrics and the skills that we think are going to be desirable 5 years out, that we outperform in those metrics, and that we have the workers we need to fill those jobs. So I'll show you the last slide here, and it shows pro forma. We have some work to do in this area, but that's how I think we should be defining success, at least from the business perspective. We'll get into more data. I want to touch briefly on the CERC-DEC partnership. Some of you may have seen this slide before, and I realize it's a bit noisy. But CERC and DECD, and CERC is the not-for-profit based in Rocky Hill. Peter Dinius is here, who's the CEO of CERC. Him and I chat on a regular basis, more than regular, I would say. But we are working together as it relates to identifying businesses to come to Connecticut, retaining businesses in the state of Connecticut, and really addressing the business environment. Workforce is part of that environment, but more broadly, we're covering all aspects of doing business in the state of Connecticut and the environment. How is that relevant for the Workforce Council here? Put the last 4 bullet points on the slide. We think CERC and DECD are going to be a real execution and what we call implementation partner. Obviously, the Department of Labor, workforce competitiveness, the real boots on the ground are going to be there. But as it relates to supplementing some of the business expertise and the industry expertise, CERC and DECD are having a lot of those conversations, and we want to provide that to the Council. In addition, there's a significant research and analysis function, and we'll talk about the Economic Development Strategy Project in a second. And then also anything as it relates to incentives, programs that we're doing, we think we could be a good partner there as well. So I referenced this economic development strategy initiative, and this is something that I think will be complementary and work really hand in hand with what Garrett and this council are going to be doing. This is a project that we kicked off about a month and a half ago, where we're really engaging the market more broadly, stakeholders across the state, and we're focused on a long-term comprehensive economic development strategy for the state of Connecticut. So it's really going to include an in-depth analysis and examination of strengths and a cataloging of the strengths we have, as well as the weaknesses that we need to address. It's going to be just like what we're doing here, very data-driven, and we're going to have specific metrics and targeted outcomes. We want to make sure it's clear how we're going to measure success in 2025 or lack thereof. And then there's going to be a real prioritization of activities. This will be an action-oriented plan. We plan on, likely this is a January, but maybe a February unveiling, and we'll do a roadshow around the state. Workforce will be a part of this plan, but this council clearly is going to drive the specifics as it relates to workforce and what we're doing on that end. But workforce is going to be a key component of our economic development strategy because it's really crucial to our businesses and what they need to grow right now. Just a couple examples here of some successful partnerships, and these have been DECD working with Department of Labor in many instances. On the left here, ACM, which is the aerospace components manufacturers. This is we are Aerospace Alley here. The governor was mentioning it at the outset. They had their biggest conference actually yesterday up in Hartford, and this is an example where the average aerospace manufacturer in the state of Connecticut, components manufacturer, is actually quite small. You can let less than 40 people in each of those companies, and what the ACM did here is they joined companies together because it was tough to coordinate and the cost of actual training and retraining of a lot of their members. They joined together to create these classes, both in classrooms as well as online. And the state worked on this on a 50-50 basis, so there were dollars that the state provided to complement the small manufacturers to basically do the upskilling they needed to do. So this was a very successful program, and this is something that there's a demand from the industry to do more of this. On the right, the Connecticut Tech Talent Fund was roughly 18 months ago it came about, and Holborn, Tech Talent South, and General Assembly are in New Haven, Hartford, and Stamford respectively, but these are coding schools. And where the state worked alongside these schools is to give startup dollars. It was roughly $1 million to $1.5 million through legislation for these schools to get up and running to provide coders and coding talent to the Connecticut community. Last thing I just want to leave you with, and I know we're going to have more data on this later, and I think some of the P20 Win team is here, but this was a slide that really jumped out at me when I started in my role 9 months ago. This is a projection of technology talent, both on a spot basis and then what we think we will need in 2022 and where there is a deficiency. So going left to right, there's an estimation of the replacement of current jobs in each of these sectors by 2022, so 2 years' time. In addition to that, there's new jobs by that date that we forecast in terms of where there's going to be job growth in the state of Connecticut. And then there's an estimate of the percentage of those jobs in aggregate that are requiring an associate's or bachelor's degree. So the third column from the right, jobs available for CT's college graduates in 2022, you can see for computer science over 16,000 jobs, but we're projecting over a 4-year period just 6,000 graduates to accept those jobs. So only 35% of those jobs will be filled by the graduates in the state of Connecticut. So that's an example of a significant deficiency. You see that also in engineering, less so. We've added a lot of capacity there. UConn in particular has. In physical sciences, we also have this. So this data obviously will be updated, but this is the kind of thing that I think we need to really talk about. It's important to businesses because when they see this, they feel like if they're going to have a computer science business here, well, they're already operating at a disadvantage because we're going to need to net import all of this talent from out of state, and that's just not going to be acceptable. That's incremental risk to those businesses. We need to address that here. So with that, I will stop and pass it back to Garrett or to Kelly. Kelly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you a best practice that we have developed in Eastern Connecticut called the through the Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance in partnership with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board. This program is a really great example of collaborative working with the middle schools, the high schools, the community colleges, the WIBs, and industry partners. So really what we've done here is we've taken a real proactive approach to meet the ongoing and urgent demands of the industries in our region, guided by Electric Boat, who has the biggest demand, their supply chain, and then the other manufacturers that are within our region. And we've done this, again, with collaboration. There's been over 30 partners that have collaborated on this project. We've been working on it for 5 years. It was originally funded through a federal grant through the Department of Labor. We had such success with the program that the state funded it for a bit, and we're now expanding the program throughout the state. So I'm excited to share with you the work that we've done here. The problem that we have, and we've all talked about it, and that's why we're all here today, is we just don't have the people available to fill the workplace needs that we have. And so we really work to figure out what's the best way to meet the immediate demand. So we have this gap in skills of about 20 years. So we have all of these people who are ready to retire and have all this knowledge, and then we have a group of some people in the middle, and now we have to backfill that all in with new entry-level people. So we're looking at how do we get people into this pipeline quickly and educate them in a manner that can get them up and running fastest. So we developed a program where we have a portal, and we have people who are unemployed and underemployed apply to the portal, and that was industry participants had collaborated with all of these different aspects of the program. We developed a screening and an assessment, so they go through a 3-hour screening and assessment of the program, and then we identify what types of curriculum we want them to run through. So our program has really, and it looks like this, identified 5 different areas that we need to focus on to meet the immediate demands of people. So as a participant of the program, this is kind of the process that you would run through. You would apply, you would do the assessment, you'd go to an orientation. The employer could possibly interview you at that point, or you could be put into a training class. The training classes run between 5 to 10 weeks. And they hit topics such as welding, sheet metal, introductory skills, including machining, and some engineering programming type skills. So they go through these classes, and the goal is that within a very short period of time, they come up with an entry-level amount of skills, more so than anybody that we have coming out off of the street. And then the goal of the organization is once we bring these people into our company, then we continue to do on-the-job training and incumbent worker training to move them up through the ranks and the skill levels through our companies. This project also has wraparound services that we know that we need in order to support candidates to go through these programs. So most of them run in the evening, so people who are working during the day can come to these classes in the evening. They run 5 days a week for 6 hours a night. And we do provide, again, those wraparound services that include childcare, gas stipends, safety tools, safety shoes and tools, and things like that. There has been a huge commitment of employers in Eastern Connecticut. So if you'll see here, this is on EB's website, where they're saying that a requirement to work for their company in an entry-level job is either a certain amount of skill or that they're participating in the pipeline initiative. So we've built this model directly into EB's hiring model, and they're involved in every aspect of the program. The impact has been amazing. So we have placed 1,512 people in the last 3.5 years. And the majority of the placement rate is 95%. So we have a huge success. And again, these are people who are unemployed and underemployed. They're typically the hardest to place and employ. So our attainment rate has been excellent. Now, what this has done for our employers is that it's taken the time to bring in an unskilled worker and get them trained up into being a productive entry-level employee. It's cut that time in about half. So from my perspective as an employer, I've hired 12 people out of this program, and I just have 60 people in my company right now. So you can see that I use this as really one of my only tools for hiring now. And the result of that has been really amazing, because we've got these people now who come in who are fully committed. Now, these are people who have gone through this whole process of having to fill out an application, go through the assessment, and take all these classes. So you know when they come to you that they're committed to be there and want to continue to learn. And again, the attrition rate is very low on these. And it's really saved companies millions of dollars in an aggregate and training expenses on bringing in people who had no prior experience. We've also aligned this with apprenticeship, and one of the things I need to mention here is that these programs have been developed in collaboration with industry and with the community colleges. So Three Rivers Community College and Quinebaug Valley Community College are teaching all of these programs. They have facilities in their campuses at QV. They have a brand new manufacturing center that was funded by the CAMI grant several years ago. And Three Rivers, we just had an unveiling of our new advanced manufacturing center on the Grasso Tech campus on Tuesday. So what we were able to do is leverage the resources of the brand new technical high school and put in a 8,000 square foot lab in their facility. So now we've got a connection with the technical high school, with those students, and with the employers. And we can switch out what we're teaching in those facilities by just moving some equipment in and out and using the different lab settings that we have. So what we've created here is a complement to the programs that are already been established at the community colleges, the certificate and the associate degree programs. We target a population that typically wouldn't see themselves going into college, and so they come into these programs, they gain some success in a college-related program, they earn pre-apprenticeship hours, and then they take that certificate on into their employer. And so what we have right now in our environment is we have this gap of people who are skilled in the middle and upper ends. So what this does is it backfills in the entry-level positions, and then what we're working on is developing additional pathways so that the incumbent workers get additional training through the certificate programs and the associate degree programs and on to the bachelor's degrees. And they could do that either through the colleges or with the apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship component is very important here. And as you can see, we've issued over 850 pre-apprenticeship certificates for participants in this program. So it's been very successful in that way. And now we're working on expanding this model. So we've been recognized with several visits from the Secretary of Labor. The past two secretaries have come in and looked at our program and have it as a best practice model. So how do we now take that model and expand it in Connecticut? So based on this success, there was $50 million put in bond funding to be allocated to the expansion within Connecticut. The first $5 million was distributed at the beginning of last year, and we also have a line item in the budget for the Eastern Workforce Investment Board to continue their work. And what we've done with EWIB is we've partnered with the Workforce Alliance in New Haven. Bill Villano's here, thank you. And we've worked with him to consult on how do you take the model and the best practices and implement it into your region. So we now have partnerships with Gateway Community College and Middlesex Community College, partnerships with local industry there, And we have been able to carry the portal and the assessments over and share those practices and share the curriculum that has been developed. And now we're in the process of expanding this, and we've identified that there's a large plastics industry in that region, and there's a very high demand for an entry-level program into plastics. So we're working now on a collaboration between two different regions, Three Rivers Community College and Middlesex, and the EWIB and the Workforce Alliance, and with Vinyl Tech to be our technical high school partner to develop this plastics program, and with input from industry partners. So it's very vital for us to continue to expand these best practices. And there's a huge economic result that is connected to this. So we've now created people who are unemployed and underemployed, who are typically probably getting some types of services from Connecticut, and now we've created them turned them into taxpayers. So manufacturing is one of the few jobs that for every job created, up to 2.5 additional jobs in the economy are created. So based on that model, we've created 3,855 plus jobs in Eastern Connecticut over the last four years or so. The industry partners have been extremely involved in this process with in-kind of developing all of the portals, the assessments. They create the demand data. They've created the curriculum. They provide content experts to teach in the programs and to consult on the curriculum development. And they've also provided hiring commitments. So we'll get a group of industry to come together, and they say here's a critical demand for a specific class, and we run that class. And that's why we have 95% placement out of those classes, because they're taught on demand, and typically a lot of those students get a job offer contingent upon successful completion prior to even leaving the training program. We've added $120 million in annual wages to the state's economy, and this $10 million investment is break even after 2 years. So we have these compounding return on investment of wages and taxes paid on those wages. Thank you very much.
Next we have Kurt Westby, Department of Labor, my new best friend.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Governor. Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss DOL programs, particularly as they relate to the workforce development boards and other agency employment needs. I'm not going to be talking about the great work that the educational institutions do in workforce development. That's coming. Workforce Innovation Act really drives a lot of the work that the Department of Labor does here in the state of Connecticut, as well as other agencies. Title I is the funding umbrella for workforce development programs. It was adopted in 2014 with very broad bipartisan support. The idea is that it promotes coordination between agencies, between industry sectors, partnerships, common measures, transparent performance, accountability, very strong employer engagement, and targeted populations. The goals are to improve workforce quality of those targeted populations that I'm going to mention in a second, and reduce dependency on income assistance programs. Title I prioritizes what are called unemployed adults or low-income adults. You may be folks who may be on public assistance. Some vets are in that category. It prioritizes dislocated workers, folks that are unlikely to return to work, people who may be homeless, who have basic skills deficiencies, may be disabled. And thirdly, Title I prioritizes youth, but mainly out-of-skill youth, people who need help. So what we do at the Department of Labor is offer job prep workshops, counseling, certifications, courses, resume help, whatever's needed. Last year, we served 6,700 people through our American Job Centers by the workforce development boards. Our board leaders are over there on the right side. So that's just Title I of WIOA. We also have Wagner-Peiser, the Wagner-Peiser Exchange, that doesn't have any restrictions, basically, in terms of eligibility criteria. These programs are for unemployment claimants. Last year, 40,000 people utilized our Wagner-Peiser services. Most services are done in the American Job Centers. Typical services would be resume assistance, job referrals, and employer recruitments. Trade Adjustment Allowance. This is another federal program. This is for workers who lost jobs due to foreign trade competition. We have a trade and rapid response unit that goes very quickly out to employers. The second we learn that there will be a layoff, our folks go out and help workers who may be losing their jobs to avail them of whatever services are necessary. 780 people were served last year with this service. The nice thing about TAA is that it's extremely generous in benefits. This is federal money, again. Up to $25,300 can be utilized in training subsidies, the entire array of training subsidies per person. This year, our allocation was increased to $12 million, and Capital Workforce Partners, one of the workforce development boards, also won a $6 million dislocated worker grant, which largely does the same thing. So there's a lot of money there for a lot of program. Unemployment compensation, I'm trying to run through this as quickly as possible. We have a lot of programs. We, of course, run the unemployment office. 180,000 people applied for UI last year, 150,000 got it. Most get back to work following mandated UI work search criteria, but maybe not quick enough. The average number of weeks that people are out under UI is 16. We implemented a pilot a year and a half ago called RECE of 8,000 people, basically imposed a more rigorous job search to those folks and drove down the average length of time people were on unemployment to 10 weeks. So that's 16 to 10 weeks. So that we think that that's a great and very effective program. Jobs for vets. We work with the Connecticut Department of Veteran Affairs. This federal grant pays for specialized services for vets and spouses who may have barriers to employment. We also sponsor the very popular Heroes for Hire annual job fair for vets, which draws close to 600 vets and 137 employers. It's the biggest one in New England. JAFIS is another federal program for TANF recipients. TANF, that's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. The JAFIS program is a partnership with the Department of Social Services and the Workforce Development Boards. Close to 8,000 people were served last year by case managers to help all those folks gain employment. We're currently working on a partnership with DSS to better address the barriers to employment before applying job supports, and I'm very excited about that pilot that we'll be introducing soon with DSS. We also have the Job Corps. These are residential career tech training programs, particularly IT, advanced manufacturing, and nursing. This is for disadvantaged population, inner city population, youths from ages 16 to 24. We have two facilities, one in Hartford and one in New Haven. They're very, very effective programs, and again, that's another federal program. We also have apprenticeships 6,000 apprentices are currently undergoing training right now. That's the highest per capita number of apprentices undergoing apprenticeship training in New England. 1,600 employers, mainly right now in the construction trades, but we're expanding very quickly into the insurance and manufacturing industries, and we've been getting a lot of success with that. So one of the challenges we have is connecting our apprenticeship program with the Trade Act program we have, where there's a lot of money, with the Wagner-Pizer program we have, with the WIOA program at certain locations. And one great example of that is Synergy High School in East Hartford, where we've brought all those resources together for disadvantaged youth and have been plugging those folks into the local manufacturers up there. It's been very successful. We also have a lot of pre-apprenticeship programs in the high schools, particularly in manufacturing, that we've been developing. Ruth Levy down in Deep River was involved with one of those programs, and if she has a chance, she could talk a little bit about that. Who are the players? Well, CTDOL is a player. We administer or coordinate most partner programs that are U.S. DOL funded, quote unquote, required programs. The workforce development boards consist of 5 regions. These are the workhorses of job development here in Connecticut, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that in a second. The State Department of Education is governed, at least in the work programs, by WIOA Title II Adult Ed. And the boards have MOUs with the State Department of Education for services for people who are deficient in skills but have a GED or diploma. So this is kind of a forgotten group of people who need some support. Last year, 1,800 were served, including accessing courses at the local community colleges. We have a relationship with the Department of Social Services, as I discussed a little bit earlier with the JAFIS program. We also have a relationship with the Department of Economic and Community Development. The Manufacturing Innovation Fund incumbent worker training grants have been very popular with local manufacturers, as well as the Manufacturing Innovation Fund apprenticeship grants. We also collaborate, our business services representatives with DECD's business service representatives in matching workers to employers and the requisite training programs that they might need. Department of Aging and Disability Services, governed by Title V, Voc Rehab, we receive direct referrals from the department. We have DEI, Disability Employment Initiative, navigators who facilitate training of youths with disabilities from ages 14 to 24. This last year, we served almost 1,000 who ended up with internships or received credentials. So we're happy with those results. And of course, we've been having a burgeoning relationship with the Department of Correction through our apprenticeship department for training within the facilities. And we're going to be done with, we think we're going to have 3 apprenticeship training programs up and running pretty soon. All of these programs are devoted to getting jobs for people in need of some sort of support. Our efforts are to coordinate the many silos of support for the purpose of landing quality jobs, thereby eliminating the need for continuing supports. American Job Centers. The American Job Centers are the main infrastructure of the workforce system. They certainly are the primary location for access to programs and services. We have 20 AJCs. 5 are called comprehensive AJCs that are run by the Department of Labor and the Workforce Development Boards. The other 15 are run exclusively by the Workforce Development Boards. They're scattered across the state. So anyone in need of assistance doesn't really have very far to go to get to an American Job Center. The comprehensive centers offers access to the full array of partner programs. And when I say partner, I mean other agency partner programs and the Workforce Development Board partner programs. That includes UI services. Years ago, UI, or unemployment and service, was completely separated from our employment services. There were no personnel in our employment offices, in our American Job Centers. As of 2 years ago, we began putting our UI folks into the job centers and integrating our UI people who have just become unemployed and introducing them to our employment folks. And I think we've been getting very good results with that. That program is called Meaningful Assistance. So the AJ services are available to anyone regardless of employment status, and they're designed to provide a seamless delivery system of all services. The boards, workforce development boards. In 1992, the General Assembly established workforce development boards to coordinate regional workforce development programs. The boards develop developmental goals, objectives, and strategies to implement in each area. They ensure that job seekers have access to the array of services to meet employers' demands, and they touch every educational level from secondary to post-secondary if needed based on the individuals that they're servicing. They create employment and training plans to work with other organizations to ensure that all regional planning is consistent with the overall statewide goals. They use labor market information to target their plans. They are the center of the partnerships where workers meet employers. And of course, they administer pipeline programs providing specifically trained workers directly to employers. You saw the EWIB pipeline presentation by Kelly. I'm not going to talk about that anymore, but I will say that there are more pipeline programs that have evolved. Two of them that have evolved as a result of that one that apply that model in Waterbury and New Haven, and they're very successful. There are other construction pipeline initiatives also in Hartford and other areas that have been very successful. The boards are the Capital Workforce Partners in Hartford, Northwest Regional Workforce Board in Waterbury, the Workforce Alliance in New Haven, Eastern Workforce Board in Franklin, the Workplace in Bridgeport. Okay, he's asking me to speed up here. All right. Impacts and outcomes. Last slide, Garrett. CT Hires is our case management system that integrates WIOA core programs that I was talking about a second ago, job seekers and employers. A unique identifier co-enrolls job seekers with other agencies such as Voc Rehab and Adult Ed. This makes it a very powerful tool to meet employer needs. We also utilize federal metrics to measure job outcomes through our ETPL, or our Eligible Training Providers list. Here we can analyze performance data. Data can be uploaded by training providers as well to meet their performance requirements. This is another powerful tool to better deliver quality trained workers as we tweak our training programs to better meet employer needs. P20 Win, DOL is a point agency tasked with integrating longitudinal data from other agencies in order to correlate job outcomes with educational attainment, and you're going to have a little more discussion on that in a second, so I won't get into that anymore. Creating career pathways for any job seeker is a desired outcome. Providing employers with assistance in hiring, whatever that means, in regards to qualified candidates that meet their skills, is a desired outcome. And certainly growing programs that train and place registered apprentices and pre-apprentices. And apprenticeship programs bridge employer needs with specific high school or college courses, to get the unemployed to work quickly and with little or no debt. Work-based learning is one solution that we believe that incorporates employer-driven outside curriculum with formalized on-the-job training. This approach has the promise to quickly and inexpensively meet the immediate employment needs in critical industries such as manufacturing. And that concludes my remarks, since I'm in a hurry. I've got the task of introducing Chris Liddy to talk about supportive services, the COO of the Office of Early Childhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. We are running a little behind, so I will try not to let my portion drag on. My name is Christopher Liddy. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Office of Early Childhood. I know the purple is quite bold today, so I hope it wakes you up a little bit. I'm here today on behalf of Commissioner Bai, who is down in Nashville at the National Association for the Education of Young Children, so she sends her regards. Commissioner Bai and our agency enthusiastically support this council and are eager to escalate the importance of things like childcare, transportation, and even elder care, amongst many others, in an effort to promote a two-generational, whole-family approach to workforce development, because we know that without these critical supports, our parents are challenged to join the workforce and may ultimately abstain from participating at all, or may be forced to place their children in unsafe childcare settings or situations so that they can simply get to work. Connecticut had 6 deaths recently of infants and toddlers because they were placed in unsafe care. I have to believe that those of us assembled here today genuinely care about the growing workforce and attracting the best talent to fill those jobs. If that is actually the case, we must first talk about the scaffolding that supports that goal and maintains that progress. So I'm going to take you through just a quick reflection activity, if you'd indulge me. For some of you, this may be a very real and current situation, and for others, you may have to jog your memory a little bit. So take a moment to think about when your children were young. If you don't have children, try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who does. Living in the Northeast, we are all faced with crippling snowstorms. Most are predictable, but when they aren't, they sneak up on us. Think about waking up in the morning and learning that your child's daycare or school has been canceled due to the weather. And I'm hearing laughing. All right. If you come from a warmer state, think about a time when your child was sick or another weather event and you couldn't get to work. Think about for a moment what you had to do, who you had to lean on for support. What did your employer say? What privileges or resources did you have at your disposal? Generally, how did you feel in that moment when you had to troubleshoot the day? What I would expect to hear from you all was that it was stressful, that you had to stay home with your child and miss work, that you had to rely on your neighbors or other family members to pitch in, and perhaps some of you have had the privilege of maybe having a nanny or a partner who is a full-time caregiver. That's very nice, but the majority of our workforce do not have that privilege. Now think about having that stress, that wonder, and that uncertainty every single day for a variety of reasons. Imagine waking up and every day being a snow day for your children, worrying about finding affordable, reliable, quality care for your child so that you can go to work or school. Think about how stressful that is. I don't want to oversimplify a relatively complex problem, but childcare matters, and it makes a real difference in the lives of our workforce, which means to those of us sitting around the table today, it makes a real difference in your lives as employers and policymakers as well. The fact of the matter is, problems with childcare are very stressful for workers. And we know that a whole lot of stress, especially related to our little ones, creates a series of problems. So let's take a look at some of those problems. There are some pretty startling findings in the 2019 Ready Nation report. Their survey asked participants to talk about and reflect on how childcare problems impacted their productivity, time and effort at work, or their career paths. This is what those respondents said. With regards to time and effort at work, 63% left work earlier than normal, missed a day of full work, been distracted at work. Productivity and performance at work, you can see, is incredibly high. They've had difficulties or problems participating in their work-related training or education. 25% reduced their regular work hours because of problems with childcare. The fact of the matter is, problems with childcare undermine job stability, cause incredible stress, and lead to a destabilized and potentially underperforming workforce. So again, childcare is not necessarily just a support service. It's part of the critical infrastructure and scaffolding to our workforce efforts. This is no news, and there is no longer a question that our current childcare system does not meet the needs of parents and employers. So I really hope that this group assembled here today will take this on. In the Ready Nation report, this particular number really startled me. The top-line findings of a new study examining the economic impacts of the nation's child care crisis on working parents, employers, and taxpayers describe the consequences. The verdict? An annual economic cost of $57 billion in lost earnings, productivity, and revenue. I believe this is a problem. So what are we going to do about it, and what have we been doing? First, we must think about childcare again as part of the critical workforce support and infrastructure. For a long time, childcare has been something that families just have to, quote unquote, figure it out, despite their resources, income levels, and resources with regards to their family supports. We know that this is a relatively shallow way of thinking about the people that you all are trying to attract, grow, and do the work that you need them to do. So we need to proceed with intentionality. Second, aligning childcare with the current and future workforce. We know that the value of childcare is critical to our current workforce. Around the table, without adequate childcare for your employees, they wouldn't be showing up. But further, kids in care today are your workers 15 to 20 years later. And so it is of your interest to pay attention and support quality care. We know that children are not naturally equipped with the skills necessary to be successful later in life. This is why we need quality education in early care and education. Third, a whole family two-generational approach. We've heard about the whole family approach earlier, and I'm really glad to hear that we're all thinking in that direction. Connecticut is one of 6 states leading on this approach, but we do have a long way to go to ensure that all parts of the system is able to see, embrace, and implement what we know actually works. We know that our workers come from a wide range of family constellations, backgrounds, challenges, and that each member of the family's success are interdependent. When we start serving families as a unit and seeing them as a unit, all members are better able to achieve their goals. I think intuitively we have known this for a long time, but we have always been pretty dismissive of it. We now know that it matters, and we know that it matters to growing our workforce. And finally, this is the foundation. This is it. We need affordable, accessible, and high-quality childcare. This is how Connecticut has been achieving that. I just pulled a few examples. I won't spend too much time talking about them. The Office of Early Childhood has a lot of cross-agency work that we are doing, as well as with the private industries. these are just a few that I pulled out that are most recent. We are really excited and proud to be partnering with the University of Connecticut, who has given us the capacity to really research and implement some of our pilot projects that don't necessarily fall within the guidelines of how we're allowed to spend our money here in Connecticut. So we're leveraging our federal dollars. For example, with our Care for Kids program, it might shock some of you that families who are only working, not in training, are eligible for that subsidy program. The University of Connecticut and their team has really given us an opportunity to pilot some projects and look at the evaluation of those projects outside of those parameters. Commissioner Bai and Mark Ojakian, President Ojakian, have also been working on an MOU with the support of the USDA and DSS, which will open up opportunities for low-income parents with young children to earn a higher education credential by providing access to childcare. The Bristol manufacturing pilot is a 12-week training program that combines workforce training with childcare. So again, looking at non-standard hours of care. I think we all get very casual in thinking about childcare being 9 to 5, but many of the industries, including some of the industries represented here, do not have 9 to 5 hours, and we have to break away from thinking about childcare in that way. To that point, we also have worked with the University of Connecticut and the State Department of Education with regards to allowing giving funding and supporting childcare at their adult education sites. I'm trying to speed this up here. All right. And finally, as noted earlier, the OEC, along with many other state agencies and stakeholders, are promoting and really leading the charge with this idea of a whole family approach to jobs and workforce development. In fact, most, if not all, of what we're doing is really developed through a whole family lens and an eye towards growing our current and future workforce. I'll leave you with this last quote before I get kicked off here that really stood with me. Aside from a few rarely recalled historical instances, no one has fully taken responsibility to ensure that there is an adequate supply of early child care that first and foremost meets the needs of working parents in the United States. We are proud here in Connecticut that we have an Office of Early Childhood whose job and whose role is to do just that and to partner with you all to ensure that your workforce is supported. Thank you.
My first arbitrary and capricious decision as your chair is to cancel the break. Anybody who feels the need to step out and do whatever, please do so unobtrusively. I just want to warn you that if you're doing that now, you will miss a part of Alice Pritchard, who's our next speaker. She's going to talk about the community college system. She is a great workforce expert and a chief of staff of the CSCU system. Thank you, Alice.
Okay, I'm really going to do this in 3 minutes because there's other people who should talk. And President Ojakian couldn't be here today, sends his regrets, and I'll save 7 of my minutes for him for the next time we're together. So I just wanted for anybody who does not know what Connecticut State Colleges and Universities is comprised of. We have 4 state universities, 12 community colleges, and Charter Oak State College, which is a fully online college. We have 80,000 students who live and work in Connecticut. They are Connecticut's current and future workforce. So that's my early slides. I just want to tell you about a few things that are challenging the community colleges in particular as they try to be an asset to the state. And we are a tremendous asset at the community colleges, but as we look to the future, we'll be the first ones to tell you that we can do more and do better to meet our system's bedrock principles of access, equity, and opportunity. We do a good job on the access front. We've got 17 institutions across our state. Just about every community is covered well, so we've got that down. But increasing equity and opportunity is just as important as preserving access. And for our community colleges, sadly, their graduation rates and success rates are lower than anyone would like and lower than our neighboring states. So we have to do better to improve our equity and access, or we will never meet the needs of Connecticut's employers. But we also have to, in our system at the moment, face some really daunting financial circumstances. Over the last 9 years, our resources have dropped from the state by 13%. They have dropped for lots of other agencies. I won't pretend that that's not the case. But that has meant that our institutions have less resources to meet the growing needs of students. And with less public investment, we have to think twice about how we're investing our resources. And we know that we need to get our house in order and to do a better job with the scarce resources that we have from our state's taxpayers and from the students who pay tuition in our institutions. So I want to tell you about one reform that we're making in order to get our house in order, which is that we're implementing on behalf of the Board of Regents something called Students First. If you've read any newspapers, you have heard these words before, to adopt a brand new operating model. In addition to keeping all of our campuses and satellites open, and we made that determination early that that was critical, that closing off access because of our transportation system, Governor, and other limitations, we know that people can't always get to education if we close those doors. So we're keeping those things open. But we've also got to create efficiencies across our 12 community colleges in a footprint as small as Connecticut. And we've got to realize cost savings so that we can reinvest those savings in the supports that students need. And that is what we are trying to do to close our persistent equity gap in Connecticut. And in partnership with this council, I believe that we can do more to make sure that Connecticut's industries has the pipeline of students that it needs. Thank you. I do. Okay.
I wanted more from Alice, but that was pretty good. Next speaker is Dr. Thomas Catholias from the University of Connecticut.
Great. You know, I counted down the program, and although we're not having a break, I am the seventh speaker, so I'd like to propose a seventh inning stretch. If you all, anybody who would like to, please feel free to stand up and just take a couple of deep breaths with me. Please. Yeah, take me out to the ball game. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Not quite the same as a break, but it's a little something. So, yeah, you'll take it. Thank you. I don't know where Joe went, but I want to thank Joe for hosting us in this beautiful facility and campus, and the governor and Garrett for bringing us together for this exciting purpose. To the Governor Lamont's point, we are an education and workforce state, and the University of Connecticut is one star in a constellation of great public and private colleges and universities in the state of Connecticut. But we're a relatively big star, and this first slide sort of gives you a sense of the scale. This is a photograph of just one class, the freshman class at UConn. And this is also move-in day for the freshman class. So you get a sense of the scale here. 32,000 students, $250 million in research funding. We are among the 50 state flagship universities in the United States. We are number 15, and we are among the fastest rising public universities in the nation. And we're my observation, having been here for about 4 months, is that we are a university that is incredibly committed to the public mission. From every constituent I meet with, faculty, staff, students, alums, donors, legislators, there's this huge commitment to this public mission of affordable access to high-quality education. So, as a new leader, I've brought a few new questions for the faculty, the staff, and other constituents. And these formative questions are leading to a strategic planning exercise that will culminate next year. The formative questions are, how can we double research and scholarship at the University of Connecticut over the next decade? How can we more intentionally expand the role of Connecticut in supporting the state's economic and workforce needs? And thirdly, how can we assure that every student has a life-transformative experience in their education? So number 2 is really about workforce development, and number 3 is about human development. But interestingly, the recent research has shown that those two converge. The kinds of experiences that lead to well-being later in life are exactly the same kinds of experiences that lead to high work engagement later in life. So that's fortunate. And of course, the first one at the top also is synergistic with the other two as well. You know, per the governor's comments about students attending that aerospace manufacturing event, wanting to learn about careers and jobs, you know, there's been a dramatic change in the United States in terms of the motivations of the public for higher education. For the first time in history, the number one reason to go to college is not to get a good education. And that only happened about 3 years ago. For the first time, the number one reason to go to college is to get a good job. And that's, you know, that we take it for granted here at this meeting, but it's actually new. That has not been on the landscape. This is a little bit about our contributions to the workforce. I think the one in the upper left kind of really strikes me. We produce 51% of the engineers trained in the state of Connecticut. So again, the scale of what UConn doing is pretty significant. And you can see the others here. 73% of the graduates from UConn who are Connecticut natives stay in Connecticut and earn $50K or more within 2 years, and 17% of the out-of-state students stay. So the more interesting thing is not what we're doing now, but what could we do more? And what I'm really excited about is what's the possibilities afforded by the group that's gathered here together today. The group of university leaders, the group of industry leaders. And why is this important? So the why is when you look at industry needs, and I'm going to quote my friend, Robert Leduc, recent CEO of Pratt Whitney, said we need bachelor's degrees and PhD degrees, but we also need welders who can code. And so the whole workforce needs within certain market sectors are really different and really challenging, and it's just clear that UConn nor any other single institution can meet those needs. So what we need is a way to integrate that together, and together we can. So how would we do that? So that's the what. Identify market sectors to focus on. We couldn't do this in every area, but we could pick one or two or three, and David Lehman mentioned a couple of them. Advanced manufacturing being one. Another might be data sciences, including fintech, and the other would be biotech. But pick whatever they are, one or two or three, and we would coordinate across the different heterogeneous types of educational institutions to create seamless pathways for students and workers to come in and out of the education flow. And I'll show you that in just a second in a cartoon. But how would we make that happen? And we start today, and we begin by convening presidents, the ones who are here. We've already had some conversations offline about this, and craft a strategy to go forward, and then convene chief academic officers and the market sector subject matter experts to develop an approach and a plan, and finally, the subject matter experts within our school to implement it. So this is a cartoon of what we're talking about. This is oversimplified, and yet it looks pretty complex. So this is the 50. I think at the beginning, Garrett said there are 54% of Connecticut citizens go on to a degree beyond high school, something like that. So this is taking that 54% and seeing where do they go on to. And they're roughly in proportion where they go into four-year colleges, two-year colleges, vocational training. I wish I had a good pointer here to show you, but the basic idea is that what we'd like to do is create pathways where students can go into vocational education, go into the workforce, but then stay in the workforce or then come back in through a seamless pipeline back into a four-year college or a two-year college to upskill. And by having coordinated education, so we're working together from the same curriculum plan, making it easier for students to do that. The other ways we can coordinate, include sharing recruitment of high school students to inform them of what the promising career paths there are for them. You know, each individual university doing that, it would be a big burden on our resources, but working together, that's an easy thing to do. And then the other part is Garrett talked about databases, but think about a statewide database on internship opportunities for students, where the employers here gather together and provide input into that, and the shared colleges and universities take from that in order to shape their curriculum and shape their placements. So these are just a couple of the ideas. But I would offer to you that we're in a kind of unique position here in the state of Connecticut. I would say we are the optimal size to do something like this kind of integrated education, where we have a large enough and strong enough higher education base to offer a diversity of training opportunities for students, but we're not so large that we can't all collaborate together and do something really special. So thank you very much.
We'll be sure to get everybody a copy of that slide, that cool pipeline slide that Tom had up here. We have a joint speaking engagement next, which is will be Scott Gall, who is our new Chief Data Officer, who's going to be really critical to our success here in the next several years, and Jan Keeney, who runs the P20 WINS project. She works in CSCU and runs a collaborative among a half a dozen other agencies that you're going to hear about.
All right, thank you. Jan and I are the data team, and so we're going to start with some numbers on the first slide. But we really want to talk about some of the resources that the state already has in place and what we're doing to improve those resources so that the council and everybody else invested in workforce development has really the data to enable them to make decisions, improve programs, measure outcomes, communicate about the work that's being done, all the things that I think you've heard about here previously today. So we pulled 3 facts from the existing state workforce systems. These are just 3 that we pulled together, and I'll talk through them real quickly, and then we'll talk about sort of why, how these came to be. So a lot of what you heard today about looking at people who are not sort of on the college path is important. About half of the high school seniors come out and they don't graduate from college within 6 years. So this sort of coming out of high school, going into college, coming out in 4 years, about half the state's population does not take that path. That's meaningful because if you don't attend college within the 6 years after graduating from high school, you have about a 1 in 4 chance of earning a living wage, which is not a very high bar. And I think what we're seeing, there are a lot of students in Connecticut who, even if they start on that path, they have difficulty maintaining that path. In particular, there's a lot of students who are in remedial courses, which is something that is a challenge to persist and make it through college. So we pulled these facts from some of the existing data systems that the state of Connecticut has. For those of you that have read the materials in the binder, I think you'll see these are the kinds of things NGA says we want states to pay attention to understand the talent pipeline. So the state of Connecticut, we have some of these resources in place already. We've been working to improve them. Jan's going to talk a little bit about what's actually in place already in a minute. But I think with the work that we're trying to do, we're very enthusiastic about the ability to work with the council and see what we can do to improve and make the data that the state has more responsive to the needs of the workforce system and ultimately to the residents of the state. One of the points I think Commissioner Westby listed all the agencies that labor works with on workforce development programs. Each of those agencies has their own data assets, and so something that we want to build on over time, and Jan will talk about this in a minute, is really making sure that the assets from all the different state agencies from the full public sector are brought to bear to understand workforce development issues in the state. Jan.
We're going as quickly as we can. So I am Jan Keeney. I am a Senior Associate for Decision Support Resources at Connecticut State Colleges and Universities. And I'm just going to put this up.
We're caught up.
Sorry? How do we? You're caught up. Yes. Thank you. So I'm here to speak about this thing called the Preschool through 20 Plus Workforce Information Network, also known as P20WIN. And P20WIN is a voluntary collaboration between the state's education and workforce agencies. Its purpose is to improve Connecticut's education system policies and programs for students of all ages. It goes from early childhood, primary, secondary, post-secondary, workforce and adult training, the whole gamut. It is a federated system. And there's a diagram. So when these 6 participating agencies link data, they're retaining ownership over that and only linking it on an as-needed basis. the circle in the center, which Commissioner Westby pointed to their role within DOL, is it is their role to do the data matching, whether they are included or not. So it's a federated system. There is no shared repository of linked data, of education workforce data in the state. That's important to understand. It's also important to know that we have data sharing agreements that enable this. So when we're moving unit record individual data, we're doing it legally. We have data sharing agreements that have been held up by the U.S. Department of Education and Privacy Technical and Assistance Center and used as models for other states. So we're on very firm grounding with that, and it's very important to understand that data security, individual privacy are paramount to our operation. It's also important for you to know that this collaboration was designed to evolve. So we started as 3, we are now 6, and you can see from the bubble in the far right lower corner that we're looking to bring in other entities so we can have more information about our student body, their characteristics, their experiences, the barriers that they face, so we can develop more nuanced policies, programs to really improve the education pipeline for everyone. So as an example, very briefly, you can see the major sectors of education information that might exist. The brackets give you some simple examples of places in which we have already linked data. For example, the ones on the bottom all are work that have been done by state agency by state agency staff, and the ones on the top have been done by individuals elsewhere. I think that's important for you to know so that the system is responsive to working with entities outside of state agencies. Those on the top, Yale, UConn, Georgetown University, and the Urban Institute. For example, we've linked SDE data to post-secondary data in order to provide high schools and districts with information specifically about the number of students who've needed remediation in post-secondary experience. We've linked that SDE data directly to wage data or to the Department of Labor data to understand for those who don't go on to post-secondary how many of them are working. Are they achieving a living wage? What's happening to them 1 year, 2 years, 6 years out after high school graduation? And also right now, we've actually done quite a bit of work in linking post-secondary to employment data. So for post-secondary outcomes, everywhere from certificates through PhDs, you can go online right now and find data tables and visualizations that will give you 8 years of data by sector. So that's all public colleges and universities, including UConn, our sector, CSCU, individual institutions. There's information about the private institutions as well, going from the high school graduating classes of 2009-10 through 2017-18. There's quite a bit of information this committee could leverage as it is. I think an overriding point here is that this committee will be developing policy questions and needs for analysis and reports, and you will look to the data teams within P20WIN and within other entities as well to provide those answers. We look forward to hearing what your questions are and working with you on that. Oh, one more slide. I'm sorry. So we're also improving as we go along. We've recently applied for a state longitudinal data system grant from the U.S. Department of Education, which should give us some additional resources. We should find out about that in the beginning of 2020 if we receive it. And we're actively, as I mentioned before, reaching out to additional state agencies to improve our ability to answer interesting questions. Scott.
And then the last 2 bullet points. To emphasize, I think what Jan's saying, that we're really working to improve the systems actively, and we hope that responds to the questions that emerge out of the council. The last 2 I want to call out are 2 things I think that are primarily through Office of Policy and Management. So we'll be participating in national technical assistance on data sharing. I think we've had enthusiastic participation from the Early Childhood Office and from Department of Labor. They're so excited they want to send more people to it, which is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from other states, to emulate best practices from elsewhere. A lot of time and effort has been put into building what we have in place, but there's always more that can be done. And then early in 2020, you get 2 reports out of Office of Policy and Management, one on legal barriers to cross-agency data sharing, which will be very exciting for everyone here to read. And then a second, that was a joke. And then the second I'm excited. A second report particularly focused on, I think, what's come up a couple of times, which is sort of 2-gen or whole family solutions. So that report is not about data, but there are sections that are going to talk about the data infrastructure that's needed for that. We've been actively working with Office of Early Child, again, particularly on that in a group of community stakeholders. Two things to just kind of call out for that. One is that there will be public comment for the 2Gen reports, hopefully starting December 2nd to 13th. So anyone who's heard that concept today and is interested in it, the report will be on our website, and people are welcome to provide comments on that. We would encourage people to do that. I think that's everything we want to cover. Oh, all right. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan and Scott. We're actually back on schedule. I've spent a lot of time paddling around the state and the agencies, and one observation I would have is that relative to what I had expected, we have mountains of data in the state. We collect a ton of it. We actually assemble it a lot. We don't assemble it in a way that's very pleasing to behold usually. The P21's initiative really demonstrates what we can do when we put people together to try to work across agencies. I mean, the idea of anonymizing wage data and testing it against our training activities and our education activities is really, really interesting. It tells you a lot about what's working and not. And right now it is an ad hoc, on-request activity. I saw it for 5 minutes and said, this is the kind of management information that we need to run the business. So I really want to try to put the pedal to the metal on being aggressive about using the data and in the appropriate way to help us understand our outcomes and our results so that we're getting a bang for our buck. So I'm very excited about the work that Jan and Scott are doing. I wanted to preserve a moment for public comment. Anybody who is here, who's been listening, who would like to offer a comment or a question, now is your time. I guess traditionally this was done at the beginning of the meetings, which I didn't think made any sense because people didn't have a chance to react to what was going to be said in the meeting, which is, it may turn out to be a good idea. But anyway, do I have any hands? Anybody want to make a comment? Okay. Governor Lamont was going to be gone, but I see he's still here. I'll make a few comments, and maybe the governor can make some closing comments. I've decided we're not going to vote on the bylaw amendments. They're really pretty pro forma. They enable us to, they enable members to have designees at meetings. It enables the creation of the chief administrator officer role and the partner committee member role that I described earlier. It allows people to attend by conference call, and it eliminates a couple of prior notice requirements for meetings. So it's pretty benign, but I figured in the interest of good form, we'll vote on that in the next meeting, and people can look at it. There's a very user-friendly comparison of the before and after. For anybody who wants to read that in Exhibit 7, it is supremely uninteresting, I can tell you in advance, which you've probably already figured out. The thing I forgot to mention in my comments before was one of the things we'll be working on between now and January is designing a listening tour. So in the period between our first and second board meetings, we'll design a set of meetings around the state, probably specialized based on subject matter. The governor is excited to participate in a lot of those, as am I, as will be many of you. You will be invited as members to attend. It won't be required attendance for members. But I think it will be a really good way to show them the stuff that we will show you at the end of the next 3-month period about the state of play and what we think are really cool ideas that we want to wrestle to the ground on a very preliminary basis and then solicit input from the public. And the public may take the form of a business audience or a specialist audience in some area, but mostly they'll be open to the public like this. So we'll figure that out in the next couple of months, and I think that will be a really interesting exercise. In terms of committees, we want to have committee meetings separate from the board meeting within a week or two of the board meeting. So the work we're doing now will lead up to committee meetings that we'll put on the calendar in late January. We want to make that as user-friendly as possible, but those will be good work sessions and really roll up your sleeves with a smaller group. We'll send you an email before Christmas about how it's going and what we're finding, things we thought we ought to tell you, just so that you're kept up to date. And if anybody who has a committee assignment doesn't feel right to them, please email me. and say, hey, I'd prefer to be on, IT than healthcare or whatever. I've gotten a couple of those. So I want to take all those together, and I will do my best to accommodate your preferences. And I should add, as a committee member and as a board member, you're representing the state, and you're representing broadly your area of interest. So if you're a manufacturing CEO, you're representing the industry, but you're also representing, obviously, what we all want to get done as a state. So it's not the input generally, I forgot to mention this earlier, shouldn't be, hey, I'm Stanley Black & Decker, and this is what's good for us. That's obvious to most of it, but I want to make that clear so that everyone takes that away. I think that's for me. That's it for me. I'm really, really pleased that you've all agreed to do this. I promise you that we will put you to work and that we will give a lot of thought to making efficient use of your time. But as I said, we've all got to change the way we think about things. The world's just changing too damn fast, and we're way behind in terms of getting our workforce support systems in every dimension caught up to the reality of the world. We can be extraordinarily competitive as a state. I love what Tom Casalea said about the size of the state being we have great resources, and we're small enough that we should be like a one phone call town. We can do a lot of collaborating and compete really, really effectively in a way that Texas just can't do. So I'm excited for us all to get after it. I will hand it over now to Governor Lamont to close it up. Thank you, folks.
I just want to say I salute your incredible stamina. There was a mountain of data. There are extraordinary programs that you've all described, a myriad of programs, right from K through 12, right up through higher ed, what you need in terms of the social services to support the people that need the job training going forward. I get a sense in the state that a lot of people are doing extraordinary work. What I'd like to see this committee be able to do is make sure we're all rowing in the same direction. We have all these different programs and all these different strategies and all these different revenue streams, working towards a common goal. And I was really struck by what Garrett said in the introduction, that when employers are looking around the country, they can tell those states and those cities that have a plan, that have a strategy, and those that don't. And I think thanks to all of you, we're going to have a plan and a strategy. Thanks for being here, everybody.